That's a lot of information. And I think people were so engrossed. I just see the, messages coming in because they were so focused. Okay, somebody is asking, where can we buy the cocoa pods?
Well, it depends where they are, doesn't it, really? But again, I every time I go to Origin, I come home with a suitcase full of cocoa pods. Uh, and if you go on eBay today, you'll see cocoa pods at $14 each. Now, the cocoa farmers who are sat there listening to me saying this will be amazed. Uh, but so if you can get a dry cocoa pod, and the problem is, or the problem I found, is if you ask a farmer to dry you some cocoa pods, they'll just leave them in a pile on the floor and let them dry. That won't work because they'll go very, very black and they'll get mold and they won't. So you need to bring them inside. These have sat on my windowsill in England, in cold England, and I've turned them every day so they've dried. And I brought these back on the 12th of December. So, and they now, you can dry. Uh, that is now worth £13 or £14. So there's an opportunity for someone, whether it's a farmer, to say, I'm going to dry some and keep them nice and make them clean. And the bigger the better, because they need to look, big enough to be demonstrable. But you can sell them. So you can sell a whole pod, or you could cut them in half, let them dry, then cut them in half to use. You can make a chocolate fondant. So if there are chefs listening, you could put a classic melt in the middle chocolate fondant. You cut these down there, so you've got two halves. Spoon in the mixture, put them in the oven for 9 minutes, and then serve them to your customer, your guest, like that. And they'll crack through the top layer of sponge, and then you'll get the runny chocolate sauce in the middle. And that works. And we've done that several times. So you can only use them 2 or 3 times before they become too brittle because the oven eventually burns them. But they're only going in for 9 minutes. So that's a really easy solution. And that gives a market to a farmer to sell them in a different way to what they are used to doing.
So you said you can bring the cocoa pods, but countries like US, we cannot, bring fresh food unless we have like agricultural clearance. So is there any way the farmers can process it halfway because it's fresh food is not allowed?
Absolutely.
So is there anything that farmers can do to help the people who want to buy
Yeah,
without problem to anyone?
yeah, to dry the pods properly, really, and to keep them looking attractive. So to bring the pods into the village, put them on a drying table when you're not drying your beans, turn them in and wipe them to make sure there's no mold or there's no yeast on the outside, so they'll stay nice and clean. Even wash them to make sure the outsides are clean and turn them uh, and sell them. You can buy in most fruit and veg markets cocoa pods. So if I could go to Covent Garden during harvest, and there will be cocoa pods on the market, but they'll be £9 or £10 each for a fresh pod.
See, the people who want to buy, they're trying to, make the pod flour, like you said, that they can use for breads. So they have to bring the fresh pod to do that, right? When it's
I,
dried, I don't know if you can still use it for the flour.
for flour, you don't use the fresh pod; you use the dry pod. Uh, and
Okay.
you would use, the chippers you have for your backyard when you've been cutting trees down. You throw them through that, and that will take them down to a finer level, and then they can go into a corn mill or something like that to be finer. But I would suggest that that's best done on the farm or industrially. So industrially, you'd use the dry pods and send them uh, in bulk uh, to do that if you were a big manufacturer. But locally, I think you would use a chipper, and then it might go to a food grinder. The something like the uh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the brand name now, but one of the expensive ones that most good restaurants would have that will blitz absolutely anything. A bit like the blend tech machines for the smoothies that'll, you can put anything in and it will pulverize it. But it's a bit more of a challenge and out of the reach of most farmers. So I don't think farmers are going to make much flour in the scheme of things. It would need to be slightly scaled up for flour.
Chef, we have a
So
really nice, oh, sorry, Mrs. Butler, go ahead. No,
no,
please.
I just want, no, I was just trying to say then maybe if there are farmers who are entrepreneurial, then it's an option for them to make it a flour and then sell the flour. That
Absolutely.
way, it's the volume is less. They can get a little bit more value in the origin, and for people buying, it's an ingredient so they can buy without any problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Sure. There's an interesting question about, before you get to the culinary aspects, do you have any, let me see, good ways of composting the pods effectively? They say I've seen farms trying to use mycelium to break down pods cheaply without machinery with mixed effects.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you can burn some of the pods and use some of the ash because that helps you compost. So you do a layer of smashed pods. The big mortar and pestle that you would get in most where you see often on videos, people doing that, that will be enough. And then you would mix it with some topsoil and then do a layer of ash on top of that. The problem is I've tried to avoid the fertilizer and animal feed because animal feed's the same way really. Just because if you give the animal too much, you can poison it. If you put too much fertilizer down, then you actually spoil the makeup of the chemistry of your farm floor, and you can overdo that, and then you end up with disease, as well as other. If dogs and cats go on your farm, then they could be poisoned by it because it's poisonous for those theobromine. So it's part of a solution, but it's not the only one, and you need to be really careful. I used to, as a chef, I'd got kitchen porters that were responsible for cleaning the kitchens and the equipment, and you'd give them all these lovely potions that chemical companies had made. And if you didn't spend time educating them on that does this and you need a mask on for that, they would think that they were really, really clever and they'd mix these chemicals together. And then you'd walk in the door and he was on the floor because he'd been overcome by the fumes. So just saying, here, do this isn't enough. You need to say, do this, but be aware of these potential difficulties. So I've avoided it a bit, but I think it's part of the solution. And it's not hard to do. There's lots of instructions. I had a look this morning, actually. So I'll happily put a one-sheeter together to say this, but there's lots of academic research that people can access for free that will tell them that.
Very good, thank you. Any guidance on creating cocktails with cacao pulp or juice?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, there are lots. I've done lots of cocktails in Sao Tome. We did a whole banquet from start to finish. So there was chocolate popcorn, chocolate cocktails, all the way through using cocoa, chocolate, cocoa juice, nibs, the pod, so every element. And there are many, many cocktails. It's citrusy, so if you think of a sour, they work really. Whiskey sours are great with that. You can do a fabulous Negroni with it. So it works really, really well. And if you want to play and practice, then grab some of the Coa, but it's not as good as taking it fresh from the pod. If you've got access to fresh pods, that's the way. If you haven't, then Coa's the next best thing. Or if you're in Origin, then you can have a farmer that might have UHT'd or low pasteurised some for you, and it'll last a little longer. But if you're really close to Origin, you should be able to get it in daily. So it shouldn't be that much of an issue. And you give a farmer a regular income by him supplying you a couple of litres a week or a day, and he would do it that way. But it will work. There are so many options. I've written some. There are some cocktail recipes on my website, so I've done a few. Mainly trying to work with the cocoa liqueur that I did, but there are dozens and dozens that don't involve just putting Hershey's chocolate syrup in a glass, which I hate to see that, and I think it's lazy mixologist skills that we're better than that.
Daniel mentions that he's making creme brulee in fresh pods and it tastes amazing and develops a special taste. That
Perfect.
sounds delightful. And it leads me to one of my questions, which was that you mentioned that you steamed the lobster tail in the cocoa pod. And my question was, and I guess Daniel answered that for me, and maybe you can expand on it. Does that impart some flavor into the lobster?
Absolutely. You season it on the inside. You may put herbs, certainly salt and pepper, and fresh herbs from the rainforest because you're there. Tie it with twine, and then it steams, and you get the lovely citrus because it's citrusy, lychee, kiwi, those sorts of notes that would come out from the pod. So yeah, you would get those absolutely.
Yes, somebody is asking how do they eliminate the contamination on the parts? The heat process like boiling or heating in the oven or by frying?
Well, frying kills everything just about. So with the twice fried pods, that's really important. But if you're drying pods to do other things, then a really good wash and then keep them dry so you don't get mold on them. If you're in North America or here, then you can actually use. There are lots of treatments that we do for lettuce that you put in the water and wash them. So you can do that as well, depending where you are. Milton fluid is one that springs to mind. Certainly here, that's what you would use. And I know lots of chefs will wash their salad and vegetables in that to ensure they're clean. But yeah, anyway, the way you would keep a tomato clean if you're going to eat it, exactly the same process, really. So if we're not eating salads, then for disease, then it's the same, really.
There are a lot of questions here, and at the same time, if anyone would like to use the raise hand feature as well, we can open your mic, and it's fun for us to read the questions, but it's also exciting to hear them in your own voice. So if anyone wants to have their mic open and make a comment or have their question.
There's somebody asked if there's a publication. I've written or I've started writing a recipe book. It's not finished. It's in Word format for now, and it will grow. But there's 29 recipes or 29 techniques. I'll happily share that with you, and then you can put the link and let people have that. But it's incomplete because it's on a journey.
Let me see. Lydia, would you like to come in? Oh, somebody raised their hand. I was going to invite Lydia to come in and talk about what she mentioned. Let me see who's got their hand up. Well, Lydia says, I am privileged to have inherited a big cocoa farm. I'm very keen on building a sustainable circular model, but have a hard time starting. What would you say is one of the easiest wins or lowest hanging fruit?
Vinegar. Cocoa vinegar would be the thing because it's really low impacts. It's something that's been thrown away. I can see if it's the same Lydia, she had a brunch with Coa, she mentioned there, to see what they're doing with cocoa juice. But vinegar has multiple uses, whether it's cleaning, and generally in Nigeria and Ghana, they don't use much vinegar, but it's a fabulous chemical cleaning product as well as health products. So it's really good for the bodies. It breaks down fat, so it helps your body process fats. It's really, really healthy. And then you can clean, wash, season, pickle, preserve. One of the issues I was told first time I went to Ghana is that sometimes the government will give, or Cocoa Bod will give out cabbage plants and say when the harvest is not there, when you're weeding during the in-between times, plant cabbage and that will give you an income. The problem is they gave them to everybody. So when you went to the market was loaded with cabbage. The price of cabbage went really low. You couldn't give them away. So in that instance, you could take vinegar and pickle the cabbage, and the cabbage could come out later. So in Haiti, for example, they have a garnish called pickles, and it's basically coleslaw with Scotch bonnet chili in white wine vinegar. And you take, so it's really hot, so not mayonnaise, white wine vinegar, and you take that out and you put it on the side of everything, and it's a really spicy slaw. And you can use the vinegar for cooking, and you can do piquois sauces or other things with that. So you get these two uses, and you've saved your cabbage till you can get a better price for it because you've done this other dish. I think it's things like that, and saying, when I spoke to middle class Ghanaians, they got vinegar. Poor people don't, because generally subsistence farmers aren't eating vinegar. So they say, oh, we don't do that. So, but I don't want to sell it to you. I want you to go sell it to the middle class people that live in the town or the city over there. They've got money. Go take it from them. Go give them a product. So there are 2,000 millionaires in Accra. You know, they aspire to North American diets, European diets. So sell them vinegar. Sell them some of these things. Maybe it's not going to be your next door neighbour, but it'll be your near neighbour that you could do that. So some of those things I think are really easy to do and quick. It takes 32 days to make vinegar, and that's stirring every day for 2 minutes. So there's not a lot of effort once you've collected it. It's more effort to put it in bottles and label it and do those things.
David, I'm sorry, Daniel, it looks like your mic is open, so
Can you
welcome.
hear me? Oh, wow. Okay, fantastic. Nice to meet you, Chef. Thank you so much. A lot of great information. Also, would be great if you can share more of the recipe books, as you mentioned. I have actually a lot of questions. I could ask a lot of questions, but one specifically, I'm based in Thailand and lucky enough here to be incorporated in the entire supply chain because I'm a chef by training and sort of slowly moved up the supply chain or closer to the farmer, and now run also on the side a chocolate factory, and we also do fermentation and post-harvest processing and everything. So I've gotten involved in the entire value chain by now, and we've tried ourselves to make the flour because I had the flour from Blue Stripe, and it's actually like that flour works quite well for baking. And there is a lot of non-wheat flours in Thailand as well, like banana flours and so on. So we've tried similar processes, and what we've tried so far is usually wheat flour is ground at about 12 to 14% moisture content. So we've tried that with cacao pods as well, but I do not get any decent results. Like so far, the flour is all either way too sticky, or it like when we make the pots too dry, then it becomes really brown and not easy to bake with, and very unpleasant in any sort of bakery. Do you know how Blue Stripe makes theirs, or is there any sort of processing that is involved on bigger scale flour production? And have you sort of like, can you give an insight on what exactly goes into those cacao flours that are on the market?
I'm on that same journey as you, actually. I only know the craft way of making it, which is, it sounds like you're already doing that. And I found some of the same results. So we're having to moderate the amount of liquid going into a recipe because of the amount that cocoa drinks up when you do
Yeah.
that, then it becomes unpleasant. So I've seen the colour issues, which is why I suggest substitution rather than, partial substitution.
Partial. Mm.
Or use it to say we're fortifying this flour with cocoa because of nutritional benefits. But I'm still on that journey. I haven't given up because I want to know. So as I keep travelling around, I'll try and answer that question because I want to know for other people anyway. So I think you're doing a reasonably thorough job of what you're doing. I think you probably know more about cocoa flour than I do.
I'll definitely send you a text or an email after this call, and yeah, I'd love to hear if you find out anything. Maybe we can crack this together.
Yeah,
Thank you
exactly.
so much.
And again, it's important to know that the stuff I'm doing, I want to be open source. There's a couple of very large companies that said, "Oh, can we have this exclusiveness?" And now this belongs to the world. Really, I'm doing it because I think I want to help people have more income. I'm not doing it because I want to sell somebody something.
No,
It's not.
totally appreciate that. I feel that's exactly the kind of attitude we need in cacao a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay, Lydia says she just came back from brunch with the ones that make cocoa juice. It's great what they do. They showed various uses for cocoa juice. Me, as a Ghanaian cocoa farmer, I find it frustrating, though, that Western startups have that access to funding these circular concepts. Are there any programs or projects for product development?
Well, with juice, again, if you look on my website, you'll see on the blog section, you'll see a blog about turning juice or sweatings into juice. And you can do it with a laundry basket and a plastic bin. So we bought a plastic dustbin, a laundry basket that had little holes in where you would go and peg out your washing after you'd done that. So obviously clean and brand new. And then we made a tap in the bottom of the bucket of the bin so we could get the liquid out. And you just you bring your cocoa beans back to your community rather than leaving them out on the farm. Put them in the basket, rub them round once, and then tomorrow come and do the same again. And you'll get, within 2 days, you'll get all the sweatings off. You can take the beans then and put them back on the drying table and continue. You shouldn't take all the sweatings from the beans. You only take 70% and you leave 30 on there. And then the rest you can do that. So you'd have juice quite quickly. It'll take probably 2 days, put the juice in the fridge then, and it'll last about a week. And it'll start to thicken. Remember that the thing that goes off is water, and juice is quite high in water content. So that's the bit you need to be careful with, unless you're going to do the low temperature pasteurization, which again, that's at a cost because that's $120 for a sous vide circulator-ish. So one method is drink it within 2 or 3 days, and you chill that, and that'd be really nice, or serve it over ice. And if you then want it to last 3 months and you're going to bottle it, then you need to think about pasteurization. So there's one that's free, one that costs just a bin. If you get a salad spinner, that will speed up the process. And again, the salad spinner I took out was £2 for a plastic salad spinner. And I'm sure that I see lots of people that are really skilled engineers. That could be something that could be made locally that would do the same job, that would be accessible, and instead, because I don't know if salad spinners are available everywhere. This one was probably made in China or Taiwan. It wasn't the best of quality, but I wanted to do it as cheaply as I possibly could, rather than me turning up with my Gucci equipment and say, well, look at this, that's fine. But then when I go, nobody else can do it. So I think it can be done for almost nothing.
Thank you. Kim has a great question. Yeah, here in the South, in the US, they pick a watermelon rind. Kim wants to know, have you tried pickling the pod shell?
No is the quick answer. But it sounds like an interesting, it goes into chutneys, so which again is a version of fermenting. So I mean, I made a truffle for a competition once that was piccalilli. I don't know if you know the condiment, and that's got mustard, carrots, cauliflower, and vinegar in it as part of its the chutney. And I turned that into a caramel and then blended it with some Colombian chocolate. It was amazing, and it won an award. So you can take these things that you would think wouldn't work, and if you obviously I was adding sugar and cream, that helps everything, doesn't it?
I want to eat that. Let's see. Isabel wants to know if it's safe to use vinegar as it comes from fermentation in food without any distillation or any other treatment.
It is, because it's so acidic, and during the process, you have two processes. You've got the alcoholic fermentation, which is the first stage. Because basically, when you do this, you get the juice, and natural yeasts are in the atmosphere, like when you're making sourdough. They come and eat the sugar, and they poop out alcohol. Sorry for being so graphic. And then when all the sugar's gone, they die, and another one of the bacteria or yeasts in the atmosphere that eats alcohol takes over, and it poops out acetic acid. And the alcohol is a really good thing for preserver of shelf life, as we know when we're trying to make lots of things. And vinegar, there's very little can grow in the vinegar as well. When all the alcohol's been eaten, that other yeast dies, and you cover it up. So if you cover it up, nothing can get in. Most things can't grow in there. You've got a lid on. It's fine. You can go on and distill, but we have a thing called a non-brewed condiment here as well. So you can brew it or not brew it. There are other ways of making vinegar. If you want to do it commercially at scale, you can buy a vinegar plant, and that will do all the necessary stuff. But you know, a decent vinegar plant is 30,000-40,000 euro, and then you start to get really big. So locally, you can make vinegar. I've got a friend in Panama, and lovely Lynn may be listening, or she'll certainly catch up. And she makes banana vinegar and pineapple vinegar that way, and eat on a cocoa farm, and we'll do that. Really simple to do. Cocoa vinegar is just another one of those. So if you look at some of the preserving books on how to make vinegar, it's easily accessible. If you do it at scale, then you need to invest, because you need a factory that's, you know, European or North American food safe standards, because anybody you're going to sell it to will demand those assurances anyway. And that doesn't really matter whether it's healthy. They want to see the certificates and the audits and all that. So this is aimed bottom level, but you can scale up.
Yeah, a couple of people are interesting to know about the dried part. They're asking, are the parts dried after you take the beans or with the beans intact? And if it's beans intact, once it dried, are the beans edible, are usable for any eating?
No, I mean, these had beans in, clearly, and they've evaporated, so there's no rattle here. I do have some pods where the beans have stayed intact inside, and you could rattle them, and you could take those out and probably get them to sprout, so you could grow them. But I don't see any use other than this being decoration, really. So if you think of, there are 17,000 primary schools in England. and they have cocoa on the curriculum. So they would all love to have a cocoa pod, I would guess, to show the kids and let them see what a cocoa pod looks like, rather than just seeing a photograph or a video. So that, and I think there are many chocolate makers and chocolatiers who want cocoa pods, because I often get asked to do that. So, and anybody that's been to exhibitions will have seen the thing people come and prop is the cocoa pod to do that. So I think that is the easiest way. And I wouldn't use the bean. Well, these beans have gone, so and I've not cut it open just to see what's happened inside.
If anybody else wants to, ask questions, they can raise their hands again, or we can continue asking the
Marilyn's
questions.
asked for contact details again, but they'll be at the end, Marilyn, anyway. So feel free you'll spot those because they'll be on the recording as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to
I'm just
pop
trying
back
to
to the vinegar real quick. Daniel made a really good, interesting point that if you're making vinegar and selling it as not pasteurized, it's actually worth more money, because the unpasteurized, you can market it as raw, unpasteurized with the mother, sort of like they do here with the apple cider vinegar, and it has that, higher health value.
Yeah, a bottle of apple cider vinegar in Accra in Ghana in December was $14 for a 150ml, but small bottle. So absolutely, it's worth much more.
Well, as Mrs. Ballo and I are scanning the chat to make sure we haven't missed any of the questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature. We'll open your mic and either a comment or a question, or maybe share how you've used, how you've done something with what we're talking about, the waste to taste.
Yeah, here's I know Kim is talking about pickling the pot shell, but recently I got the pickle made from the cocoa nibs from the Indian company Chitram Chocolates. So he took the cocoa nibs and made it into pickle. It's so delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of creative ways people are coming up with. And then, somebody mentioned, Genevieve mentioned that, tan buns krati from Suriname. They were selling the cocoa pod strips, that outer thing, and they said you can soak it in water and use it on your hair as a hair gel. So people are getting very creative. So, and now I think Risha raised her
You
hand.
can use the
so
leaves, dried leaves from the cocoa tree, make a tonic. So again, all over Ghana, they'll take this tonic, and it's using bay leaf, nutmeg leaf, cocoa leaf, and you can do that. I think the recipe or the article again is on my blog for one of those. There are lots of things we ignore. We throw in cocoa root away when the tree comes up, and cocoa root is really used in the herbal industry and could be used a lot more. So if you cut it and powder it, then you've an opportunity to sell that as well, or make a potion with it and then sell the potion.
So you said the cocoa leaves with the cinnamon leaves, and what's the other one?
Nutmeg.
Nutmeg. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, good day, everyone. Thank you, Chef, for all these interesting points. What I wanted to find out, and I don't know if you might have mentioned it earlier. Sorry, I was in and out, busy with some things. But with regards to some of the equipment, for example, let's say I'll take the cocoa flour, for example. Is it a simple grinder? Because I've been looking for equipment to make different, types of flours. And, you always get a different advice, or just look on Alibaba or whatever it is. So I suppose it's what would be some features of good equipment or affordable equipment or some sort of website. And then next question, have you noticed, for example, a difference in the quality, texture, taste with the different types of cocoa varieties?
Well, to the equipment, I would recommend using a chipper when you are pruning trees in your yard and you wanted to chop them up, because that will give you a manageable, almost like bark. So you run them through there, and then you can put them into a grinder and try and do that. But you may need to bring them out to dehydrate them. I've got a dehydrator as well that I would use. So you might do 2 or 3 stages to get to that stage. So I would use a cheap garden chipper rather than going for something really fancy to start with. And each variety doesn't make, for flour, doesn't make a lot of difference, but the South American cocoa pods have more mucilage, so they'll be a lot more liquid, they'll be wetter, and therefore you can factor that in when you're drying. Good thing, because you get more juice. If you're making juice and vinegar, that's a great thing. But if you're using Forastero, then you don't get as much liquid from that.
Nelson, would you like to come in and comment?
Hello.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, fine, Dave. Yeah. You look, I remember your Kente group. Yes, nice.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my question goes to CocoaTown rather. David, I think about 3 days ago, we were discussing about machines for my business. So I would like to ask CocoaTown, how can they help me with getting the needed machines for my setup? That's my question. Thank you.
No problem. Please send us an email set up an appointment with us. We will put a calendar link so we can discuss with you what your needs are, where you are located, and we will try to give you the right machines for your needs. So we can have the offline discussion on that. Definitely, Nelson.
Thank you.
And good luck with your business.
Yeah, thank you.
Lydia has made an interesting point that there's also cocoa plastic. Just wondering how do they make it, but it looks very interesting.
I haven't seen that. I know there are lots of fibers you can make, but it looked like a difficult process, because I'm trying to do things at craft level, at farm artisan level. So some of the things I've not checked, because there are many rabbit holes in cocoa. So there are some that I thought, well, I'm not going to go down that one because you can't eat it. And I'm a chef, so I'm trying to do what I know. And it seems a bit too technical for my background. I mean, as chocolate makers, we have to have a scientific interest, because chocolate is scientific. But so I've avoided it, but I'm aware it's there, but I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. So I'd be really interested if somebody else can tell me or send me a link, and I might stray a little bit.
You mentioned that cocoa has its own natural high level of pectin, which seems like it makes it a great option for, like you said, jams and jellies, because you don't have to buy and add pectin.
Yeah, absolutely, and it gets stronger as well. So if you chop a pod up and put it into water and then just stir and watch, and that water will thicken. You'd end up thickening a litre of water with one pod.
Wow.
A bit like okra does. So anybody that's cooked okra will know how slimy that gets. That does that. But you've got all the nutrients from the pod that are going into that with little flavour. It's not adding much flavour, but it's adding all the nutrients and the beneficial nutrients, and thickening. So you put less flour in, less other stuff, or you can have it as chunks as well, and that will fill out a stew and save you putting more expensive ingredients in.
That leads me to a question. If someone, since cocoa is a monocrop and if they're growing other fruits or things that they want to turn into a jelly or a jam, they could use the cocoa pod to create the pectin and then add it, because you said it doesn't impart much flavor, but that would mean they wouldn't have to buy pectin. They could, if they're growing some other fruits or vegetables on the farm, they could use the pectin from the cocoa pod to create their jelly or jam.
Yeah, and if they reduce it down and take some of the boil some of the water off, it will go sweeter. So they would be adding sugar as well,
Oh,
sweetener.
Wow, that's healthy.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I ate the ice cream made with the little bit of pulp and the pectin from cocoa and made from Ecuador. It was so good.
Fabulous. I mean, the great way you can take the cocoa pulp and freeze dry it, but it's a huge process to freeze dry that's not accessible to most of us. And it's a fabulous product. You can then sweeten cocoa with chocolate bars with it and use it like a sugar powder, but it's not accessible to most people because you need a huge liquid nitrogen tank, and so lovely idea, but
now they have started making small scale freeze dryers. In US, you can buy them for like a $1,000 or $2,000. So the technology is changing in freeze drying.
Yeah, well, that would make a difference, really. I've got a friend in Kuala Lumpur that's wanting to go down this route, so we'll watch this space. I don't know if it's this year or next year out that I'm going to work with him.
Yeah, Daniel has more question.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me again? Sorry, so I just wanted to jump in on the cocoa plastic because I've also done a bit of research in this direction. I think one of the things that I do that is very easy to do and uses the natural ability of the pods to just get really, really rock hard, as Chef David was showing as well in the video, is if you have a fresh pot, you can press it into whatever shape and just let it harden or bake it in the oven, if you will. And you can use it as a plate or whatever, like, because it really, like, it gets really, really hard. So we use them for our display plates for like chocolates and tasting and so on. And we just basically press, like, cut open the cocoa pods and then just like squeeze them into the shape that we want and dry them out. So that works very easily. There is cocoa plastic, and that uses sort of shredded cocoa pods, but then it has a plastic component. So it usually has a melamine or some other kind of resin component. So it's somewhat misleading because it is still plastic. It just is offset plastic with some biomaterial. But the cocoa pod, because it is so sticky and because it gets really hard, is also when you have, Chef David was mentioning before, the kind of like typical garden crushing tools where you can just like chop stuff up like a sort of a wood chopper or something. If you have one of those machines, you can also press the shred into any kind of shape, and it will harden just like that. So it can sort of like, I've seen people using those as kind of like experimental building blocks for potential future architect use, or as sort of like growing materials that you can do to raise a garden bed, this sort of things. So like if you have the opportunity to crush it, you can definitely press it and let it harden like that.
Perfect. Is that like you would with banana leaf plates or bamboo plates?
100%, yeah, absolutely. And it gets like, as you know, you held the pot just up, right? Like it gets a lot harder, a lot more sturdy, completely waterproof. It's a material that you can even run through a dishwasher and use it a few times before it cracks. So it's actually like super, super sturdy. But while the fresh pots, they're fairly moldable, like fairly easy to press into whatever shape. Like what I do is just basically cut them sideways, cut a little bit off, and then just press them flat and then put them in the oven to dry, and you get something that looks like a plate, and feels like a plate, and the inside membrane of the pot gets really shiny as well, so it actually makes a really nice plate.
Yeah, that's quite plasticky, that inside membrane, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
I was removing them doing the twice fried chips, and I think one time the lady that's preparing didn't remove it and cooked it, and they liked it. It was very, very tough to chew. I would have normally said it's inedible, but she ate them and said it was great, and it was the sort of thing a Ghanaian would like to eat. So I was completely wrong. They liked it, but it is edible as well.
You mentioned the chips. Is there somewhere, someone is asking, is it possible to access a step-by-step demonstration video on making the pulp chips?
Yeah, yes, I think that there might be a blog there done. The other one is I sent a link of the Mercedes Mendoza, I think, if I've got a name right without looking properly, recipe book last week across to you. So you'll have her book that's available from Choco Story in Bruges, and you can buy that in several languages. And there's probably 20 other recipes using cocoa pod and pulp and beans, etc. They're very Peruvian biased because she's from Peru, of course. But the chips is in there as well with a couple of pictures. I've got some pictures, so yeah, I'll do that and I'll send that back to you. So we'll be able to put it on the back of here. I'll do it today or tomorrow, so we'll have it before Monday.
Very good, thank you. And I've also added a link to your website in the chat where you mentioned you're referencing blogs, so people can go there and read the blogs that you've referenced. It's a wealth of information there.
Perfect. And if people have got ideas of things they'd like to see, then again, let me know, because there's like yourselves, constantly looking for other things to do and other things to explore.
I had an idea. It would be nice to make a cider. You know, you have sipping chocolate, which I love, but somehow a warm cider.
Well, they do. I've avoided alcohol.
Not alcoholic, but
yeah. If you did that on the farm, because they've made spirit, because it goes to spirit first. So most villagers can find usually an old man who was the spirit maker, and he would make this brew. It's a bit like palm wine. So I've avoided that on purpose, because we've got a bad history here in England of us taking alcohol to indigenous populations. So
yeah, no, what I was thinking about was, I don't drink alcohol. I like to find substitutes, and like here we drink apple cider.
Yeah.
In the fall, that's a big thing, apple cider. So I was thinking of from the juice, not alcoholic cider, but sort of a sipping cider.
Yeah. Well, I think it mixes. If you look at Kamazi Drinks, who again were at Chocopreneurs last week, they've created a drink. I think they're linked with Koa. I think the sister company,
yeah.
But they've done something to sell locally, and basically they've added grape juice and apple juice to cocoa juice. So the grape juice and apple juice extend it. So I assume they're using a byproduct of the Koa operation and adding that to these two fruit juices. So yeah, there are alternatives, and it's close to apple. You're in that area all the time, so absolutely it would work. And I've not tried it mulled, so I think mulling it might be really nice, especially with the spices. So if you were looking at somewhere like Grenada or one of the other Caribbean islands,
Yes.
I think somebody from Trinidad and Tobago with all that lovely cinnamon and nutmeg that's growing there, and mace, I think you could make a really good mulled version. The problem would be you'd have to make it first and pasteurize, because it thickens as you heat. So it would end, and that would be a really unpleasant drink because it'd be slimy.
Mm.
So, but I'm up for playing. I'm up for finding out.
Okay, let's see. Any more questions?
Anybody else doing anything, interesting with the other parts of the cocoa? Please feel free to share. Okay, looks like they got all the questions answered. Okay, I have one question for all of you. We have been doing these webinars free of cost all this time. The presenters will be, giving us their time, precious time and knowledge. And then, we were brainstorming something last week with David and others. And what we thought was maybe we should just start charging like maybe $5 or $10 for these webinars, and then collect that money and give the option to the presenter to give it to a farmer or some startup in the countries. And also today, somebody from Ghana asked how come we don't get any funding or we help to start a micro projects. So I just as all of you, can you put your thoughts? If we charge you $5 per webinar or $10 per webinar, what do you think? When that money will go to somebody, it's not like the presenter is not going to get that money. CocoaTown is not getting the money, but that money will be chosen. The presenter will choose where which farmer or which country they would like to donate it to. This is just getting the feel. What you think? Please feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just looking back through some of the questions. Wynette Harwood said that Angostura make cocoa bitters. They do, and they make some. There's a couple of other companies make them, but if you look, they're £14 a bottle for a 50 ml bottle, so quite small. So great money to be had, and they last forever. So the shelf life is indefinite because they're so concentrated. So making bitters would be a really good move.
And something like bitters has a multiple markets, right? You have the health food, that would be a health food thing. Also making drinks.
Mixologists, chefs use, in fact, in the 17th century, some of the best chefs, Carême and Escoffier, they used to carry a little bag, almost like a magician's tricks, and they wouldn't let anybody know what was in them, and they would put 2 drops in their stews, and some of them had an umami bitter. Then it was just the Japanese think that they invented it in 1903 or something. The Romans used a version of umami, and chefs did, and they used to carry them around, but guard them secretly, the recipes, and they would just add 2 drops in. And mixologists do a similar thing. So I think to perpetuate that and supply with interesting things, especially if you're in origin and you've got all the other spices and roots and amazing ingredients to add, then I think it could be really, really good.
Okay, Mrs. Balu's gonna end it if anybody have any questions, or is there a chance to continue a conversation with the chef?
There's maybe just before that, can you share that screen with David's contact
Contacts?
information?
Absolutely, be my pleasure.
So if people want to make a note of it before we say.
Also, there's a QR code, or what do you
Yeah.
call that? Yeah,
QR code, yeah.
yeah, QR code. Sometimes I find when they're on the screen, they don't work for me, but let's see.
Well, I'm going to test it while we're there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something about the screen gets in the way. But I did share the website in the chat, and I can do that again as
It
well.
worked for me, the QR code.
It did?
Yeah.
No, it didn't work for me, but I know how to find you.
It's working. It's working.
I can't hide.
Yes, the QR code is working, so you guys can take a picture. Okay, I think nobody has any other questions. And thank you for your feedback on, charging, and it's a good ideas. Let's think about, we're not going to charge for the in next webinar or anything, but this is something we would like to see how we can bring more impact and help more people in the origin countries. So thank you for all your feedback. Let's get into the consideration and we will come up with some solution for it. And we thank you all for joining the webinar today. And because without your participation, the webinar doesn't have any meaning because we cannot talk to ourselves. So thank you for attending. And please spread the joy to others. Let others know that about the webinars we have and how they can also benefit from it. That's some.
David,
Yes, thank you, Chef David. Great. I love the culinary arts, so I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm a foodie, so I love talking about food and doing things. And there's several people on here who I know from around the world who've helped me do that by either sending me to places to say, go and help this person, or giving me chocolate, or giving me cocoa, or giving me information. So every day is a school day for all of us. So I don't know if you can guess how passionate I am about what I do, but it's really good fun. I say every day is. I'm now over 60 years old, and I've decided I only do the things I like now. I don't have things I have to do. I have many things I like to do, and this is one of those things. And visiting farmers in origin is one of those things. Giving chefs new ingredients that they've not used or haven't been exposed to yet is one of those things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, David, for your time. Hopefully, people can, consult with you and then get benefit, because I know how passionate you are to start these small micro businesses in origin countries. So please make use of David's expertise. He is so generous for presenting this webinar without charging anything because he is so busy. And in spite of his busy schedule, he agreed for this. Thank you, David, again. And thank you, Teresa, and all the
Thank you.
CocoaTown team behind the scene. There are countless people work behind the screen to make this webinar possible. And thank you all for this. So, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Have a good rest of the weekend and enjoy. And good luck with your new business. And if you need to collaborate with each other, if you need some information, please contact us. And whoever wants to give you permission to connect you with the other attendees for collaboration, please let us know by email or or in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sleeping comedian.